Mr. Shapiro, you talked about white privilege, and just this week, I had a conversation with Rachel Lazar, who's done some work, a Jewish American woman who's done some work on this area, as well as having extensive conversations with Dr. Greg Parks of Wake Forest University, who's also talked quite a bit about critical race theory. And it's my understanding that white privilege is not telling individuals that they cannot speak, but it is a term for societal privilege that individuals have as a benefit of their white skin.
Ben Shapiro faces off with a congresswoman who tries to call him racist using the white privilege argument. But her plan backfires spectacularly as Shapiro dismantles her claims with logic, reason, and a defense of free speech. Watch as the exchange turns from a lecture into a lesson she'll never forget.
And I don't think that, and I think universities would be remiss to then say that because you're white, you're not allowed to say anything that's critical of white people. I didn't know that white privilege actually went into that sphere. My understanding is it's just, and the issue is that white privilege makes people uncomfortable to talk about the societal privilege that they have.
Well, to me, what I say on campuses all the time is if you want to cite instances of racism that we can all find and fight together, that's something that I am more than willing to stand next to you and fight, because that's obviously stuff that we should fight together. But when you just say that there is a white privilege out there in the ether and that by dint of birth your skin color generates for you an advantage, what you're really saying to people is that your view is less valuable because you have not experienced what I've experienced. And that is an identity argument, that's a character argument, that's not a rational political argument that can actually be taken on in any way. It's more of a cudgel and a club than it is an attempt to open a discussion.
Well, I think it's a demonstrable evidence that through society's demographics that being white has societal privileges that being black does not. But
we can talk about how that manifests, because that's
I'm also interested in what you just said now, is that you would stand next to anyone who has this. So, Mr. Shapiro, my question to you is, for Ms. Dunston, the tying the noose around the campus and writing messages that target African-American young students, would you consider that hate speech, and then would you stand next to her and fight for her?
As I say, I would. This is the first I'm hearing about it, honestly. But
really,
yeah. But from hearing about it, maybe because it's local. I mean, I'm from LA. But in any case, I'm more than happy to stand alongside her and fight whatever group was responsible for this. Not only more than happy. I mean, you're talking about the alt-right. Again, I was the #1 target of anti-Semitic harassment from the alt-right last year. So I'm more than happy to do all that. And I think there's one more distinction that has to be made. When we talk about cases like Taylor's, they're horrific, and the administration is siding with Taylor. Okay, the administration is doing the right thing by Taylor, or trying to do the right thing by Taylor, as they should be. And I think that we need to make a distinction between cases where the administration is actively participating in the suppression of speech and cases in which the administration is trying to do the right thing in order to punish people for application of crime.
Welcome back to Alyson Reacts. If you love seeing truth dismantle political spin, you're in the right place. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss when we take on another viral debate and expose the hypocrisy the mainstream refuses to touch. Now, in this one, we're looking at a heated exchange that perfectly captures what's wrong with our political discourse today. A congresswoman tries to lecture Ben Shapiro about white privilege, hoping to corner him, embarrass him, and label him as insensitive or worse, racist. But within minutes, the tables turn completely, and she realizes she's bitten off more than she can chew. The conversation starts innocently enough. She begins by saying she's spoken to experts in critical race theory and social justice, the kinds of academics who can talk for hours without ever saying anything concrete. She explains that white privilege isn't meant to silence white people, but rather to describe the supposed advantages they have because of their skin color. To her, it's a harmless academic idea, one meant to start conversations. But here's where Ben Shapiro steps in, and the whole mood changes. Shapiro calmly explains that if someone can point to specific, real, identifiable cases of racism, he will stand shoulder to shoulder with them to fight it. But when people say there's some invisible force called white privilege floating through society, one that supposedly gives every white person an unfair advantage from birth, That's not a conversation starter. It's a conversation ender. He points out that the moment you use that idea, you're not talking about logic anymore. You're talking about identity. You're saying someone's opinions or life experiences are automatically less valid because of their skin color. And that's not justice. That's not equality. That's just prejudice with a new name. The Congresswoman doesn't quite know how to respond. You can see she didn't expect him to handle it with such composure. So she shifts gears, bringing up a case where racist hate messages and even a noose were found targeting a black student named Taylor on a college campus. She tries to corner Shapiro by asking if he'd defend her and if he'd consider that hate speech. But Ben doesn't hesitate for a second. He says, absolutely, that's disgusting, horrific, and completely unacceptable. He makes it clear he would stand right beside that student and fight the individuals responsible. Then he adds something important. The administration at that school was actually siding with the victim, trying to do the right thing. And that's exactly what should happen in a case like this. And here's where Ben draws the line that so many people on the left refuse to acknowledge. There's a huge difference between protecting people from genuine acts of hate and trying to suppress speech simply because it offends someone. He argues that universities, and really the country as a whole, need to know the difference between punishing a crime and silencing a viewpoint. The problem today, he says, is that those two things are getting blurred together. We're told that words are violence, that disagreeing with someone's ideology is oppression, and that free speech should have limits if it hurts someone's feelings. That's exactly how the idea of white privilege gets weaponized. It stops being a discussion about opportunity or fairness and becomes a way to guilt, shame, and silence anyone who doesn't play along with the narrative. The Congresswoman, realizing her trap has failed, tries to recover by insisting that demographics prove privilege exists. But by then, the damage is done. The audience knows it, she knows it, and Shapiro calmly walks her argument into a corner she can't escape. He points out that acknowledging statistical disparities doesn't prove the existence of some invisible privilege. It proves that society is complex, that individuals make different choices, and that success can't be reduced to skin color. What Ben does here is more than just clever debating. It's a defensive principle, the idea that every human being deserves to be judged by their actions and ideas, not their race or gender or any other label. He stands for something that used to be common sense but is now treated like radical thought: equality under the law and the freedom to speak the truth. And this is exactly why the left hates debating him. Because he doesn't take the bait. He doesn't get angry, he doesn't yell. He stays calm, logical, and firm. When they come at him with emotional manipulation, he answers with reason. When they play identity politics, he plays truth. And that's why every attempt to trap him ends the same way, with the so-called